The river should have been frozen by now. That was the first wrong thing Arif noticed as he stood on the cracked wooden jetty, breath fogging the air, hands numb around his fishing rod. Snow lay thick on the banks, trees bent and skeletal under its weight. Yet the water moved, slow, dark, alive. Too alive. The sound came again. Not a splash. Not wind. A low dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled beneath the surface. Arif leaned forward, squinting into the fog. The river reflected nothing. Not the moon, not the sky, only its own black depth. His boots crunched behind him. "You hear that?" he asked without turning. No answer. He glanced back. The jetty was empty. A moment ago, there had been 4 of them. Winter fishermen, shoulder to shoulder. Silent men chasing silent fish. Now only Arif remained, standing alone with the river breathing beneath him. The dragging sound stopped. The water went still. Then, a hand broke the surface. Pale. Swollen. Fingers bent the wrong way, as if joints had forgotten how to be human. The hand did not thrash or reach. It rested, gripping the river like it belonged there. Arif's rod slipped from his fingers. From somewhere beneath the water, a voice whispered, not loud, not urgent. "You came back." The hand tightened. The river began to pull. Arif did not tell the others why his hands were shaking. He blamed the cold. Everyone did. Winter gave men excuses they didn't question. Numb fingers, stiff joints, shallow breaths. Fear could hide inside weather. The path to the river narrowed as they walked, trees crowding closer, branches clawing at the dark like they wanted to pull the men back. Snow swallowed their footprints almost instantly. It felt wrong, how quickly the ground erased proof that anyone had passed through. Rashid walked ahead, hunched, lantern swinging low. Nadim followed him, silent as a shadow. Iqbal brought up the rear, muttering under his breath. Prayers, maybe, or curses. No one asked. The river announced itself before they saw it. A low, dragging sound. Slow. Wet. Patient. Arif stopped. "Do you hear?" "Yes," Rashid said without turning. "Don't talk about it." They reached the bank. Sang-e-Siyah lay open before them, black and wide, breathing mist into the frozen air. Ice hugged the edges but never crossed the center. It never did. The current moved lazily, thick like oil, reflecting nothing but darkness. Arif felt the pressure again, the same dull ache behind his eyes, like a headache forming words it couldn't yet speak. They set their gear in practiced silence. This was not Arif's first winter on a river. But it was the first time he felt like he was being watched from below. Not stared at. Measured. He cast his line. The splash sounded too loud. Minutes passed. No bites. No wind. Even the trees seemed to lean away, listening. Rashid shifted. "The water's higher." "It always changes," Iqbal said, but his voice lacked conviction. Arif looked down. The water had crept closer to his boots. Only a few inches, but it hadn't been like that before. He was sure of it. The river wasn't flooding. It was approaching. A memory stirred, unwanted. Summer. Years ago. Children shouting. A dare. Cold water closing over his chest. Arif shook his head, forcing the thought away. Nadim suddenly reeled in his line. "My hook's gone," he said. They gathered around him. The line was intact. Clean. As if someone had calmly untied it. "That's impossible," Arif muttered. The dragging sound returned. Closer now. Beneath them. Rashid raised the lantern. The light trembled over the surface of the river, revealing something pale just beneath the water. Not a reflection. Not ice. A shape. It slid away as the light touched it. Iqbal stepped back. "We should leave." The river responded with a ripple. Not wide. Not violent. Just enough to let them know it had heard. Arif felt it then. An unmistakable tug at his line. He gripped the rod, heart jumping. "Got something," he whispered. The pull was wrong. Not sharp. Not struggling. Steady. Heavy. As if whatever was on the other end wanted to be caught. "Don't," Nadim said quietly. Arif ignored him. He reeled. The water near the bank darkened, churning slowly. The shape rose closer now. A pale curve broke the surface. Smooth, swollen. A shoulder. Arif froze. The river exhaled. The body did not float. It stood, held upright by the water itself. Skin gray-blue, stretched tight. The head lolled forward, hair plastered across a face Arif knew too well. His own breath vanished. "No," he whispered. The eyes opened. Not clouded. Not dead. Recognizing. "Arif," the thing said softly, water filling its mouth between syllables. "You let go." Rashid screamed. The lantern fell, shattering, plunging the bank into darkness. Hands grabbed Arif, dragging him backward as the river surged forward, suddenly alive. Grasping, pulling, hungry. The body dissolved beneath the surface, but the voice lingered, echoing inside Arif's skull like a memory refusing to drown. "You promised." They ran. Branches tore at their coats. Snow swallowed their panic. Behind them, the dragging sound followed. Not faster, not slower. Certain. When they reached the village lights, they didn't stop until doors slammed and bolts slid into place. Inside the small rented room, the four men stood gasping, steam rising from their bodies. No one spoke. Finally, Iqbal broke the silence. "That wasn't a fish." Nadim stared at his hands. "The river keeps what it's given." Arif sank onto the bed, head in his palms. His boots were soaked. River water pooled on the floor, creeping outward, thin and black. He hadn't noticed it dripping. Rashid looked at him then. Really looked. "You've been here before," he said. It wasn't a question. Arif didn't answer. Outside, somewhere beyond the walls, the river dragged itself along the bank. Waiting. Sleep did not come to Arif that night. When he closed his eyes, he felt water pressing against them from the inside, heavy and patient. He lay on the narrow bed, listening to the house settle, to Rashid's uneven breathing on the floor, to the distant sound of the river dragging itself along the bank like something wounded but alive. By morning, snow had sealed the village in silence. They met in the kitchen without speaking, for cups of untouched tea cooling between them. Daylight should have made the night feel unreal. It didn't. The river had followed them into the room, in wet boots, in the smell of iron and rot, in the way no one could meet Arif's eyes. Nadim broke first. "You saw it too," he said. No one answered. "The face," he continued. "That thing, it knew him." Rashid's jaw tightened. "Don't say that." "It said his name," Iqbal muttered. "Rivers don't know names." All eyes turned to Arif. He felt exposed, flayed open by their silence. "I grew up near here," he said finally. "That's all." "That's not all," Rashid snapped. "The river doesn't do that for nothing." Outside, a knock struck the door, sharp, sudden. All four men flinched. An old woman stood there, wrapped in layers of black shawls. Her eyes flicked past them into the house, as if counting. "You came in winter," she said. "Men who come in winter always think they're different." She stepped inside without being invited, her cane tapping softly on the floor. "The river takes those it remembers," she continued. "And it remembers promises." Arif's mouth went dry. "What do you know about the river?" Nadim asked. The woman smiled thinly. "Enough to stay away." She turned to Arif. "And enough to know you owe it." When she left, the house felt colder. They tried not to talk about it after that. Avoiding the river meant avoiding money, and avoiding money meant staying longer than planned. The days blurred. Gray skies, frozen meals, short tempers. But the river refused to be ignored. Objects shifted when no one touched them. Wet footprints appeared near the door at night, leading nowhere. Rashid swore he heard someone whispering from the well behind the house, calling him by a childhood nickname no one here should have known. At dusk on the third day, Arif found a fish on the doorstep. Fresh. Bleeding. Alive. Its mouth opened and closed slowly, gasping, eyes bulging as if begging. When Arif bent to pick it up, it stopped moving. Dead. Inside its belly, carved crudely into flesh, was a single word: return. They buried it in the snow. That night, Nadim told them the story. He spoke quietly, like someone afraid of waking the dead. There was a drowning years ago, he said. A boy. Winter thaw. The river was high. People said it was an accident. Arif's chest tightened. But some boys were there, Nadim continued. Older ones. They dared him. Laughed. One of them panicked when the current pulled too hard. Nadim looked directly at Arif. They let go. The room felt smaller. The body was never found, Iqbal whispered. No, Nadim said. But the river found something else. It learned. Rashid stood abruptly. Enough. But it was too late. The truth had surfaced, slow and unstoppable, like something rising from deep water. That night, Rashid didn't return. They found his boots by the riverbank the next morning. Neatly placed. Facing the water. No footprints led away. Only drag marks. The river was higher than before. And Arif knew, this wasn't punishment. It was collection. The village no longer felt real. Arif moved through the narrow snow-packed streets as if underwater, each step heavy, each breath a hiss of frost. Windows stared like blank eyes. Shutters creaked in windless air. He tried to speak to anyone, shopkeepers, passers-by, but voices seemed to twist, fading into echoes of things they never said. Are you all right? A neighbor asked at the well. Her voice was thin, fragile. I'm fine, Arif replied. But he knew it was a lie. The river had followed him. He saw it everywhere. Footprints in the snow that led nowhere. Ripples forming in puddles that had no source. Faint shapes beneath the ice-covered river. Sometimes pale faces, sometimes arms, sometimes something that looked like him. At night, the dragging started again. Not a sound to his ears, but a vibration under his skull, a steady pulse, syncing with his heartbeat. Sleep became impossible. Shadows on the walls seemed to flicker in rhythm with unseen movement. Then came the whispers. Voices from the riverbank, muttering in the cold wind. You let go. You promised. One evening, Arif followed the sound. Boots crunching in fresh snow. The river glimmered under the moon, deceptively still. A figure stood at the edge. Rashid, wet, silent, staring at the black water. Rashid. Arif called, panic cracking his voice. The figure didn't answer. It didn't move. The dragging sound came again, soft, deliberate. Arif's stomach sank. Suddenly, Rashid turned. Not fully human anymore. Skin gray-blue, eyes hollowed, but his mouth formed words Arif couldn't forget. You came back. And then he was gone, sinking into the black water, leaving only ripples that carried his scream. Arif ran. Back in the village, he tried to warn the others. But neighbors, people he had smiled at only days before, shook their heads. The river remembers only what it wants, one said. We don't touch winter water. Don't argue with it. Arif's paranoia sharpened. Objects in the rented house moved when he wasn't looking. Boots placed neatly in line by the door. Fishing rods standing upright without support. A cup of tea he hadn't poured, steam curling lazily, as if mocking him. He started to see things in mirrors. Pale faces hovering just behind him. Reflections of the river stretching farther than the walls allowed. Sometimes the reflection spoke first. Return. Arif could no longer tell reality from river trick. He noticed time bending. Dusk arrived early. Nights stretched, then collapsed. Days repeated in small variations. Sometimes he was certain he had already lived the morning he was just beginning. One night he dreamed. The river rose. Currents twisted unnaturally, forming shapes of all the boys who had ever drowned. Their mouths opened, whispering his name in unison. Their faces, mocking, accusing, shifted into someone else. He saw himself among them, pale, cold, carried away. He woke in a sweat. Boots soaked. Water pooled on the floor. He hadn't been dreaming. Iqbal confronted him next morning. It's not just you, he said, voice barely audible. The river. It doesn't care. It learns. It waits. It knows guilt. It finds it. Arif's stomach twisted. He remembered the boy, the summer, the dare, the slip, the scream. He remembered letting go. Nadim appeared then, pale, eyes wide, as he whispered, "It's inescapable. If it knows, if it remembers, it will come." The dragging sound was louder now, constant, no longer subtle, not beneath the water. It filled the air, vibrating in his teeth, his skull, his chest. Arif realized something chilling. The river didn't just punish, it teaches. Each ripple, each whisper, each lost man was a lesson. And he had forgotten the lesson once. Now it was coming for him. He tried to leave. He packed his few belongings, ready to drive hours away to escape the river's shadow. Snow blocked the roads. Vehicles wouldn't start. The village was empty, silent. Even the wind seemed to refuse him passage. At the riverbank he paused. The ice was breaking slowly, forming shapes beneath the surface. Hands, faces, torsos, all pale, all reaching. And a voice, deep, calm, unforgiving, reached him across the cold water. "You cannot leave." Arif stumbled back, heart hammering, eyes wide. Behind him, a figure rose from the snow, a man he recognized or thought he did. The body was water-swollen, face gray, eyes black. But the mouth moved in his voice. "Return. You promised." He turned. The river surged. Ice cracked. The dragging sound became a roar of water, voices, and whispers blended into a single command. And for the first time, Arif understood. The river wasn't natural. It had memory, hunger, and purpose. And it would not be denied. The snowstorm hit without warning. Arif stumbled through the white haze, boots sinking into drifts taller than he remembered, wind whipping across the riverbank like angry hands. He could hear the river even before he saw it, low, thrumming, alive. It had grown larger, wider, darker than he recalled, stretching beyond the banks, crawling across the frozen fields. He tried to run, tried to turn back. Every step forward brought him deeper into the storm, deeper into its grip. Branches tore at his coat, lashing his face. His hands shook uncontrollably. From somewhere beneath the snow, a voice whispered, "Why do you resist?" Arif froze. His blood turned to ice. The dragging sound began again. Slower, deliberate, like a giant hand tracing the ground beneath him. Then he saw them. Figures rising from the river. Pale. Swollen. Faces of every fisherman he had ever known, or thought he had known. Rashid. Nadim. Iqbal. Others he didn't recognize. All still. All watching. All moving without legs. Drifting like smoke over the ice. "You let go," one said, voice hollow, echoing in his skull. I didn't." Arif stammered, backing away, boots slipping. "You promised," another voice said. The river surged. Ice shattered underfoot, cutting deep into his ankles. Water black as tar poured through the cracks, forming hands, faces, torsos, all reaching. Arif tried to scream, but no sound emerged. The wind swallowed it. The snow muted it. Something touched his shoulder. He spun. It was him. Him, but not. Pale, bloated, lips split in a grin that wasn't a grin. Eyes hollowed. Fingers stretching impossibly long. "You always return," the figure whispered. "Always." Arif bolted, lunging toward the trees, but the landscape had shifted. Snow and river intermingled. Banks melted into one another. The sky cracked into black streaks. He ran in circles, the dragging sound following, echoing, magnifying. Branches became fingers, clawing. Rocks became faces, leering. Every familiar landmark twisted, alien. Every step forward pulled him back. Then the water rose, fast, impossibly fast. It swirled around him, cold and sentient, tugging at boots, legs, arms. It whispered promises and threats at once. "You can't leave," the river said. "You will not escape." Arif fell to his knees. Snow clung to his face. Water licked at his chest. He tried to swim through it, tried to fight, But the river was not water. It was memory. It was guilt. It was all the hands he had let go, all the voices he had ignored. He thought of the boy, the summer, the dare, the scream, the letting go. I'm sorry," he shouted. His words vanished, swallowed by wind and water. A hand emerged from the river. Then another. Soon hundreds. Grabbing, pulling, dragging. Arif screamed as he was lifted, weightless, carried into the icy black. Faces pressed to his, whispering, accusing. "You promised. You let go. You remember." He clawed at the water, clawed at the faces, clawed at his own chest. And then, silence. The river held him. The snow stopped. The storm lifted. The figures dissolved back into the black water, leaving only ripples that spread outward like echoes of memory. Arif collapsed onto the shore. His body shook, lungs screaming for air, heart hammering like it would burst. He looked up. The sky was empty. The trees motionless. The river calm. But he knew better. The river had not released him. It had marked him. He could feel its presence in his veins, in his bones, in his chest. A whispering, tugging, waiting. He tried to move, tried to rise. But something held him. Not hands. Not ice. Not snow. A weight in his mind, dragging him down, rewriting reality around him. Every memory of the village, of the river, of himself, twisted. Return. A voice, his voice, from somewhere beneath the river. Echoing. Knowing. Judging. The ice cracked again. The water shimmered. And Arif understood the truth. The river never forgave. It never forgot. It did not release. It claimed. He ran again, blindly, boots breaking through snow and ice, but the river followed. Always following. Every scream, every word, every attempt to flee was recorded in its dark depths. Every step forward was also a step backward. And in the distance, he saw it. A pale hand, rising from the ice, fingers curling, reaching. The river knew his name. It knew what he had done. And it would not forget. Arif screamed as the water surged, swallowing everything around him. His reflection twisted into someone else's face. Or someone else's guilt. He could not tell anymore. Could not breathe. Could not run. Only the dragging sound remained. When the snow melted, the village looked empty. Arif did not return. No one saw him again. The small house by the river stood silent, shutters closed, smoke never curling from the chimney. Boots remained neatly lined by the door, fishing rods still upright, teacups on the counter, but no one touched them. The river flowed steadily, calm, reflective, black and patient. The villagers whispered, but never loudly. Children were kept inside. Travelers were warned, do not come in winter. Some said they saw a figure on the riverbank at dusk, pale, hunched, staring into the black water. Others heard a faint dragging sound echoing under the ice, rising like a pulse through the ground. Nadim left the village soon after. He never spoke of that winter. Rashid never returned. Iqbal wandered alone, haunted, muttering under his breath. No one asked him questions. No one wanted answers. Inside the house, winter returned every year. The river rose higher than it should, flowing past its banks, icy water reaching steps, doors, windows. Boots that hadn't been worn for decades appeared at the door, lined neatly. Fishing rods, rods that hadn't moved in years, stood upright. And in the kitchen sometimes a cup of tea appeared, steam curling slowly, cold air filling the room with the faint smell of iron. No one drank it. No one dared. Those who stayed long enough said they felt eyes on them. The river remembered everyone who entered its shadow. Some heard whispers in the wind. Names. Past and present. Promises broken. Voices from beneath the water. All familiar. All patient. And always in the winter, the river waited. It waited for those who thought they could escape. For those who believed promises could be forgotten. For those who had let go. Because the river did not forgive. It did not forget. It did not release. Sometimes, far downstream, travelers see a figure. A man standing on a frozen bank, staring into the black water. He moves closer, and they notice the subtle sway, the way the shoulders rise and fall unnaturally, the blank, unblinking eyes. Then the dragging sound begins. Quiet at first, then louder. And they vanish. Only the river remembers. The seasons pass. Winter returns. And the river stretches, ever patient, ever knowing, curling around the banks like a dark promise. A faint voice, carried on the wind, whispers to anyone foolish enough to listen. You came back. You promised. Then silence. The snow falls again. Boots stand at the door. A fishing rod leans against the wall. The cup of tea sits, steam curling lazily. And somewhere beneath the black, patient water, the river drags its collection forward. Always waiting. Always remembering. Always coming.